Meeting for order. Roll call.
Smith?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Ashley Anderson?
Here.
Hauser?
Here.
Sarah Geiser?
Here.
Downs?
Here.
And here's the last one.
Schmidt?
Yes.
I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have any communication from the public this evening? Okay, seeing none. We have some information under item 4 on the agenda that we are pleased to have Mark Bush here tonight from Iowa State Schools, and he will be giving us a presentation later in the meeting. So, okay?
Yeah, later. Sure.
Okay, that's good. Come on up. We'll do it now.
Just kidding, right now.
I promise you don't want to stay. So Mark has been kind enough to visit with us
Yeah.
about some things that we can do policy-wise and practice-wise to be more welcoming for all of our students. So take it away, Mark.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me. Like I said, my name is Mark Bush. I'm the Director of Education at Iowa State Schools. Iowa State Schools is the Midwest's largest LGBTQ youth-focused organization, and it's the state's largest LGBTQ youth organization. My primary work focuses on educator professional development and workplace training. I'm a former educator myself, teaching high school chemistry and physics for 7 years before taking this role in professional development. And so, you know, the things that I want to talk about today that influence the work that you do as school board members is really kind of looking about 10,000-foot view and that policy and the best practices in terms of what can we start including in our curriculum, including in our policies to make best decisions for our students. I do have a, is it allowed to hand out handouts? Is that fine? Okay. I didn't know if this was a Law and Order and I had to like. Then evidence exhibit A is you know, this is actually a handout that I hand out to my workplace trainings. We have a lot of organizations, corporate organizations here in the city who are requesting some workplace training. I like to tell my schools that 15, 20 years ago, Ellen DeGeneres and Will and Grace did a really great job of explaining the white, lesbian, and gay experience of individuals. But that leaves out a lot of people in the LGBTQ umbrella, particularly those on that gender spectrum that lie outside of the male-female gender binary we've created. So this is kind of a nice tool to look at and to reflect on our own policies. First and foremost, that non-discrimination policy I think is crucial. Oftentimes, workplaces and schools do not identify gender identity as a protected class in Iowa. We have great workplace protections in our Civil Rights Code and also in our Iowa anti-bullying legislation. And doing a little research in your student handbook, as well as your anti-bullying policy, gender identity is listed there. And that is very good for trans and gender non-conforming students. I'd also want you to consider looking at the facilities and the access to facilities. Are students and employees able to use the restroom that best aligns with their gender identity? Are all gender facilities available for students to access and employees to access? And is it very clear that denying someone access to those facilities is a denial of their civil rights? In terms of administrative and record keeping, you absolutely need to have those legal names in your data management systems. However, those legal names don't need to be everywhere. And Iowa code clearly states that they don't need to be in yearbooks. They don't need to be in playbills, in choir programs, things like that. So ensuring those policies are there. Ensuring that confidentiality is of the utmost importance. Oftentimes when we talk about a student coming out, the instant reaction is wanting to tell parents, but students are the best monitors of their own safety. And oftentimes, including parents in the conversation when the student doesn't feel ready, that can create some safety concerns. And so empowering our educators to be bearers of that confidentiality while also trying to forge quality communication between other staff members and things like that is important. And then finally, dress code. Lots of school districts are removing gendered language out of their dress code policies, but just ensuring that dress code is not a factor in preventing someone from accessing a quality education. In terms of other things we can address, I know that health and well-being is of the utmost importance in the work that you're doing. Iowa State Schools was founded in providing safe and supportive learning environments for students. We do that through empowering the gay straight alliances, the gender and sexuality alliances, and providing other opportunities such as our Pride Camp, which is a legal summer camp, and other opportunities. But we also want to ensure that there are opportunities for our students to not just feel that safety and support, but to ask the question, what's next, right? We can provide a safe environment, but there are constant barriers that are preventing students from achieving their post-secondary goals. From finding that sense of belongingness. So it's constantly posing the questions of whatever policies and whatever work we're doing, whether it's trauma-informed care, whether it's PBIS, what have you, are the nuances in those conversations being addressed well? And so that is really my presentation. I just wanted to be here. Are there any specific questions that you have for us as an organization or anything that you're looking for specifically in this work you're doing as a school board?
What else do you have for employees as well? Like, so I know that you talked about the students a lot, but is there supports that you also provide for the staff?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And self-care and
yeah.
overall wellness?
Absolutely. So oftentimes when teachers are tasked with the responsibility of infusing inclusive curriculum, they don't know where to start. And primarily, they don't know where to start because they don't have that background, right? Like if we're trying to teach about real world concepts like gender, like sexuality, like racism, we need to have a foundation of knowledge. One of the things we do have in our repertoire is the Safe Schools Academy. Iowa State Schools is one of 4 state certified providers of licensed renewal credit. And we have 46 classes in our academy, online asynchronous courses that educators can take a myriad of topics, understanding and supporting trans students, making a classroom safe for LGBTQ youth, supporting Muslim students, ending anti-Semitism in America, civil discourse in the classroom, red, white, and who, modern politics in the classroom. We just made up a new class, Real Talk, REEL, popular movies and civil discourse in the classroom. And we're launching a mental health system supports and awareness course as well. All of those courses can be transferred into in-person classes as well. And I've had school districts take me up on the offer of spending 2 days with staff. Not only are they getting the training, but they're getting the license renewal credit at the same time, which is a quality benefit. The other thing we have for staff is we have an aligned certification program. So the Certified School Culture Advocate is you're selecting courses so that teachers themselves become the leaders in school climate and culture reform. Because oftentimes teachers feel empowered to do that work, they just don't know what to do. And so this trains them in, how do you forge relationships with community partners? How do you really work with administrators? How do you design quality professional development? The other thing we have for educators, particularly for LGBTQ populations, is we have a self-published curriculum. Our School-Wide Pride Guide Elementary Edition is a repository of age-appropriate conversations regarding LGBTQ topics. We printed it in color because we're the gay group, it has to be in color. But it's essentially a collection of lesson plans, but all the handouts are there, guiding questions for teachers to have conversations about gender and sexuality even at young ages. There are books already out there that have these conversations. I brought some with me. This book, Introducing Teddy, is a great book. If you have if you need to have conversations about gender in transitioning. Obviously, we want to be very proactive with these conversations, but oftentimes teachers are having these conversations retroactively because a student is coming out as gender non-binary, non-conforming, and trans. And so this is a great book, and there's other books as well. But we will be making middle school and high school levels as well, obviously providing professional development for that as well. So thank you for that question.
I have a question. One of the ideas that some members of the board have been tossing around was the idea of, when the parents register the child for school, they fill out the traditional sex. Are you male? Are you female? Is there any value into having a biological sex and then a designated gender with a third option if the families are aware that there are issues and having the school aware of that on the registration issues? That way we're collecting data on both the biological sex of the child. And I think that's important. And then we also have, hey, if the family knows why they should maybe share this information with the school, and then we can have this information as well to use for the child's benefit. Is there value in this, or are we doing something harmful with good intentions?
No, that's a great question. There are a lot of post-secondary institutions, colleges, whose identifying forms look very different, right? Male, female, or another option. There's a series of identifiers that you could say select all that apply. I know that at Des Moines Public, in their school registration, they simply have a yes or no question. And I can't remember the question off the top of my head, but it's essentially, would you like to have a further conversation about your child's gender or sexuality? And the return rate of yeses surprised the staff in a positive way, because that simple question was inviting to another conversation so that we can create the safe community support. Obviously, I think, marking, is your child LGBTQ, yes or no? That's a great identifier that if you want to track at-risk populations, that's definitely an option. Expanding your gender options as well is also a quality idea.
Okay, so you do feel those would be of value to students and families?
And I think that being proactive in those selections is more valuable, correct? So that yes or no question, we know that students who are LGBTQ feel have higher rates of school absenteeism, lower GPAs, just any negative factor. LGBTQ students are experiencing it worse than cisgender heterosexual counterparts. So inviting them into a conversation, I think, is more productive.
I really like that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So one of our roles is to advocate at the State House or with our legislators for issues that affect the schools. From your perspective, what's one thing that you're tracking that we should be aware of that might affect our LGBTQ students?
Yeah. These past few weeks have been very interesting at the State House, particularly for gender identity protections. There have been several bills that have been introduced, ranging from removing gender identity from the Iowa Civil Rights Code to preventing trans and gender non-conforming students from participating in sports. There's also a Don't Say Gay bill that was proposed that went into subcommittee earlier today, I believe, that's trying to essentially prevent LGBTQ inclusive curriculum or in curriculum or anything controversial. So I think being aware and being mindful of gender identity is of utmost importance. From my perspective, as a society, we've really come to terms and acknowledging the spectrum of sexuality. It's really gender identity that we're seeing the most marginalization. So being mindful, being cognizant, and being aware of that, I think is crucial. So thank you for that question.
When you spoke about specifically like changing rooms, bathrooms, etc., that make sure they're accessible, what does that look like?
Yeah. No, that's
in a perfect world?
Yeah, what does that look like in a perfect world? The Iowa Department of Education really outlines very well equitable supports for trans students. essentially, with any what-if question, the bottom line is allow the student to do whatever that best aligns to their gender identity. So in terms of bathrooms, we are not restrictive to who can use a bathroom, which bathroom. The student is allowed to use the bathroom that best aligns to their gender identity. Oftentimes I'll get the question, well, we have a family restroom in the nurse's office. Can we just force the student to use that bathroom? And the answer is no. That bathroom is a great accommodation, but we cannot force someone to use a particular bathroom. In terms of schools, I was just actually in a school earlier today that does have an all-gender bathroom, and the sign says all-gender bathroom on it. There are other schools where the bathroom doesn't look like, I always refer to the Hy-Vee, where the bathrooms are multiple stalls with wooden doors and the sinks are outside, right? I think that as kind of new construction is moving towards that direction. But I mean, having all gender bathroom signs is a great equitable procedure.
One more question. You mentioned a lot about opening up conversations with families. And what supports might you have for educators to be able to talk about those conversations in a professional way, but then also opening to the family? Do you have some family engagement support?
Yeah, so one of the supports that I would say schools does provide is our affirming resource library. So it is a project of Iowa State Schools where we deliver books free of charge to any LGBTQ student and their parents. And so we do have some parent-specific books as well. And again, we send those free of charge. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else you can think of we didn't ask you?
I don't think so. Just, yeah, no, I think that's all great. So thank you very much for inviting us. I'll actually be coming to professional development next week. I'll do a fun little presentation there with educators at the high school or K-12, I can't remember.
K-12.
K-12, woof, I'll be there. So, so thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting us, and let me know if you have any other questions.
And just for the board, Mark knows, Carrie and I will be working with Mark, trying to figure out again some options for our staff moving forward. We've already took the suggestion she contacted, and you're right, that statement, Des Moines, we like saying, would you like to be, already accessed? And to be clear, what we tell parents now, you can sign whatever you want. We don't select, we don't tell them to say, hey, pick your birth gender. Whatever they put in, that's what we send to the state. So while they don't have that third option, they do have the right to pull the date.
So is it something that we can expect on I know it's probably too late for this year's registration, but for next year's registration, that statement of inclusivity will be,
yes.
It will be on the registration. Do we need to
My last
vote?
conversation with Carrie,
Okay.
I don't
Do we
think we
need
need
to vote to make
I don't
that
think
happen,
we
or
need
is it
to
under
vote.
your purview? Perfect. Thank
No,
you so much.
Like I said, it's already been a great resource, and we'll continue to reach out.
Well, thank you so
See you
much.
next Monday.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out, taking the time.
Thanks, Mark.
So the ESSA update will be the next board meeting. So do we have the facilities update? Hi, welcome.
So Bill Harder with Stall Construction. Urbandale Elementary #1, Homestead. So we're moving along with winter construction. Jensen Builders, the concrete sub is be complete in Area A, which is at Northwest Academy, and moving on to the gym sometime towards the end of this week. Forrest and Associate, who's a mason on the job, is continuing to lay the tall firewall at Area B, C connection. He's going to start building scaffold in Area A on that storm shelter later this week. Start getting that tenant in so we can start working that area. Cattleman Steel, who's flannel steel. If you've driven by there, we got steel set everywhere right now. So they actually delivered Area B and then the joist for Area A and the decking for Area A this past week. Woodruff is setting the steel. Looks like they're slowed down, but they're actually detailing out what's stood up now and getting all the bracing in place. They'll continue working on that area. Mainline Electric, something been on site roughing in. We got to put conduit for electrical and those masonry walls. And they'll continue that, follow them through area A. And then LA Fulton Sons, the plumber, has been there, putting pipe sleeves through footings and piping under footings in areas where we need to get it in there before they pour the concrete. So, moving along, it's a little cold. Next week, looks like we're gonna start warming up. Any questions?
Do you have any sense on where we are as far as what we had hoped, where we were planning?
Well, after, so I just posted a schedule update today, which you guys don't necessarily see that. It's through the Submittal Exchange Tracking Project. I know Steve gets a notice of that. And it's pretty, after that setback on the dirt, we're running pretty much right where we thought we'd be. We're really hoping to get some warmer weather to help that out, because it will speed up. I was over there today and noticed that the ground keeps getting a little bit harder. They're having a little bit more trouble digging every day when they're digging footings, but I don't think that frost is gonna get any worse. Just looking at the weather coming, it should all get better.
So sorry for a question. When you said I'm supposed to get a notice, am I supposed to get a notice when that changes?
Do you get an email that
I'm
says,
not.
I'd probably shut it off, otherwise you're gonna get like 100 of them a day.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have.
I can turn it on, but once I turn the notices on,
I'm just note checking periodically, so that'd be good.
so anything got posted on there if you want to look at it. If anybody needs a copy, let me know. I'll send it.
We appreciate that time lapse. You know,
Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mhm. Anything else? Thanks for your time.
Yep. Fitness center projects. Fitness center finally got all the glass in and temporary heat going. That's created some other issues with some odors from propane heaters, but we're trying to work through that. They actually started painting ceilings last Thursday. And then they've been doing some detail work on the block. Once we got the first coat of block filler in, you can see all the mistakes. So Ricky's came back and been trying to touch that up. The door cut throughs are done down Trophy Hall, and so we're getting closer on that. I've got a meeting this week with the Sean Park that's doing the entries at both Webster and the high school. We got some stuff done over winter break. We're planning on doing some stuff over spring break, and hopefully we'll have the black paneling replaced with actual curtain wall door frames. Look a little better. All the hardware's in town. Getting it all hooked up and operational. It's probably gonna take a little while school's going on, but there shouldn't really be an effect on anybody. Then on the HVAC project, we're getting planning done to where as soon as the last basketball game's over with, they're gonna really hit it to get the air in the wrestling room taken care of. That gets a unit that basically pulls air clear through the north gym, and that's how we get heat into some of the areas. It basically pulls it through the rooms, and then there'll be some reheats and some radiant heat in like the showers, where it's cold. That project is on time. The fitness center, right now I'm gonna say it'll be done on time. We should be able to start moving stuff in there probably second April. We gotta pick time for grand opening because she wants a grand opening.
Yeah.
You get a Christmas pull-up bar, by the way.
I don't know if that'll be me, but okay.
Go for 20, you gotta get 20.
All right.
But the entry thing, like I said, we're gonna try to get everything done where we can do the last bit of it while school's in session. And just kind of tagging on what the gentleman here said, the bathrooms that we've been building, they very easily can be transgendered. They're completely enclosed. If you've been into the south gym, that could very easily change the signage. The gang bathrooms at Olmsted are going to start out as completely gender neutral. We've planned that from the beginning. Similar stalls. We're just going to have a common area for washing hands. And if it doesn't work, we can hang a couple signs, put the doorway in, and turn it back into the regular traditional bathrooms. And I don't think we'll be doing that. And part of the improvements over the next several years is as we change out partitions and bathrooms in existing areas, we'll just end up doing the same thing we're doing. So probably within a 10 to 15 year time frame, all the bathrooms will be considered gender neutral. So that's kind of the plan for a couple of years now to get that done. So
I would just share with the board, the biggest challenge right now at the fitness center is we have a lot of odor issues. When they cut through that block, it was very nasty. Even the paint now that they're doing is causing a lot of fumes. John's been working really hard.
Yeah, 2 days to get that
cleared. So
it will be corrected by Friday.
what I was hoping that they don't have
Yeah,
to wait for years.
we've done this at Webster, we added on, we did remodel work at the middle school, tacking on the high school, while we had kids in there, but we've never had this problem. So they just need to buy a little more plastic and pay labor to get it hung. So, and we're gonna try to have everything shut down. No, we are gonna have everything shut down for the, it's called show choir extravaganza. It's an extravaganza. So, that's all I got. Any questions?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving into the action items. We need to set a date for the certified budget hearing.
I'll move to set the public hearing for the certified budget for March 9th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So that is unanimous. Discussion, any questions on the softball field fencing?
I have a question. Why is it called softball?
Because it's against the softball field.
At Webster?
No, not at Webster. You know,
Right.
not at- well, just-
I'm not even sure I understand on that, but,
Okay.
2 years ago? Say 2 years ago, as Ishmael came to me and said they had an eloper out at Webster and get down to the cornfield, so we came up with an idea, 1,000-foot of fence down the south side, west side, north side, try to keep them pinned in. Got pricing, got it approved. We're kind of dragging on getting it put in because we had a lot of rain and we didn't want the equipment to tear all the grass up and have to go back and reseed. Wait till the ground froze, then we had too much snow. So we got into spring, just got ready to start setting posts, and I guess I didn't ask or make it clear, but the city came back and said you can't put fences around parks. Since this is taking so long, the company, American Fence, had already bought a 1,000-foot fence. So to be fair, knowing we had other places where we could use it, decided to replace the outer fence at softball. It's looking pretty ragged. It's been up there for years.
At Lions Park.
What's that? At Lions Park?
At
Yes.
Gary Page.
What's that?
At Gary Page.
Yes, yes.
Great.
You can't put a fence around a park, but apparently you put a fence around a softball field within a park. So, a little confusing, but The extra cost, and there's more gates and some changes there, it tacked another 12 onto the price, which got approved at that time, which was last spring. You get old time, just runs together. So, spring, they called recently, said they're ready to rock and roll. Can you get in there? It's about the day I got the letters from the city saying our permit expired, I've got an extension on permit, I got guys ready to roll. But I want to make sure everybody here was cool with the expenditures, because you're going to see a $30,000 PO come through and think, how come we didn't get a chance to vote? This has already been voted and approved. I just thought you guys might like a heads up, so you're not going, okay, what John did that. So.
Thank you.
So everybody.
Have we approached the city about a fence there?
Yes.
No, at Lions Park.
Yes. Yes.
You have that okay?
I have the permit in hand.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, not around a park, but a park within a park. So. All right.
Move to approve.
Do we need to, I would say it's already been approved. I don't know that we need to approve
Oh.
again.
That's correct.
Okay, we have also got a proposal for the board meetings for next school year. Not the locations, just the dates. We have the dates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just one related item to the board is, I'm really thinking we're to have our next meeting at Jensen, or I'm sorry, 2 meetings from now, the March 9th meeting. We probably will need to change that. I'm not sure if they have a place picking up. So I'll be bringing it forward at the next meeting.
Do you think they might not be there on March 9th? I need to know that because I
Yes.
published that here.
I don't think we have a place to be there, so,
Okay.
but I didn't get a chance to get it on the agenda yet when I noticed that. I thought, oh, good.
Okay, I'll change that.
But,
I'll get with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
We may have, but not this year.
That's correct. We will first double check if this is available, if not, for the board prefer, and that's kind of another question. As you look at locations, well, they don't need a vote. I guess I thought it was worth asking the board, do you prefer to be at AO or the high school community center if we're not here? Do you have a preference?
For the AO, just due to the acoustics, I feel it's more conducive to a better
Or
meeting.
here in the high school? But I want to make sure I don't want to take.
I like the room and the aesthetics at the high school, but it is very difficult to hear from one end of the table to the other, let alone for the audience. And I think we have to take that into consideration until there's a better sound system. So,
I will try to schedule it not here at the AO. Thank you.
okay. Superintendent's report, suspension data, culture work.
Again, that was on the last agenda. I have heard no questions, and I believe Dr. Schleter has not, but if you have any, she's here to address any questions you might have.
Yeah, I actually did have a question. As I was starting to look at the trend of the data, it looks as if middle school is having the highest rate of office referrals, and mostly with defiance and insubordination. So what might the middle school be doing to address that high rate of office referrals?
Yeah, so one of the incoming 6th grade class, I think, has been a little bit challenging. And
The what grade?
6th grade.
Okay.
Mr. Braden has brought together a work group they've done what's called a fishy. And so that is a problem-solving technique in order to get ideas about what potential actions might be tried. And so they have finished the problem-solving process and are in the implementation stage with that. And so are really looking at thinking about how, in terms of teacher behaviors, in terms of supervision, in terms of instruction for students, really how we can be preventative before things are happening versus just reacting to things that are happening.
And so is there then some sort of like couple-year plan goal for that? Is that, I mean, like what is the actual instruction that's taking place?
He would be
Social
able to
emotional?
speak to that and I didn't bring the information because I was not intimately involved in that.
Okay.
But I know that he would be able to speak to that if you would like more information.
Oh, go ahead. So we get the breakdown for 6 through 12. Is there a breakdown from K through 5 for the in-school and out-of-school suspensions based on grades?
I don't break that down because the number is so small that it could be identifying to the particular students involved.
Thank you.
So I noticed that we're still seeing, we had talked before about the other category, and I think that you had discussed that if I were, to the best of my recollection, that it may have been a training issue. You know, I think we were just gonna talk about eliminating that category, and I'm really happy to see it's gone down to 1, because I think it was like our highest number before. So clearly something, you know, has gone very, very well, but I would just love to see that at 0, because I think, oh my gosh, what possibly could this kid have done?
Yep, and unfortunately, I mean, there are things that you would never even expect or anticipate, so I'm not sure what that item is as well. I didn't look at that, but.
I mean, I guess if it's not related to any of the line list items, which seems pretty comprehensive, would it be appropriate to, because that seems where it worries me is it seems dangerously into at somebody's transgression that they could punish somebody. If you open up to, okay, well, that's another, it's not on the list, and that opens the door to punishment for things that aren't on the list, and so
I'll take a look and see what that particular item was, and if it should have been somewhere else, or if it's some, you know, what.
yeah, I just don't want, I think,
that
because it's not on the list, right, we shouldn't be suspending for it, because there's no, you don't really get to make a call, because this is what's set. Is that correct, or do teachers get to make discretionary calls as to suspending somebody that it wasn't for any of the line items?
a teacher would not do a suspension, they would refer it to the office.
To the office.
So an administrator would
Okay.
make that decision. But I'll take a look at it, I'm not sure what it is, so.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll make a note.
Okay, and I think, and I don't need to know, I guess, what in particular this one was. I think my question is more, I just want to make sure we're not making discretionary calls as to suspension, but rather based on data, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Carrie, I appreciate it.
I would say respectfully, board, as we're getting questions, you know, this is the reason we do have it on there, a meeting ahead. So if you have questions, then maybe we could have came prepared and had answers for you. So it's very, very helpful.
Well, if you have some questions ahead of time, at times.
Just a reminder, no, not upset, just, we want to get you the information.
One of the things that I noticed was the common factor in a lot of the categories as well as CS, and particularly at 4 elementaries, appears to be the biggest commonality. And I'm seeing it here in black and white, it's very striking. And I just think going forward with our changing demographics, particularly on the east side, we just need to be very conscious of how we're addressing things, because you know, people, we get what we serve who we have, but it is changing rapidly, and I appreciate your efforts to get this all together and being very transparent about all the documentation And I really am looking forward to how we continue to address these things and how the board can help. It continues to be concerning, and I can see that it does inside the system too. So, any other questions, comments?
No, I would just say that we were kind of discussing the same thing. Our low SES students, I would say that I don't recall, from like 2 years ago where we were at during, but it seems like the number's super high, and I just don't know if we are in a position right now to adequately serve those students, because with that population of students typically comes higher needs. So I just hope that we're responsive and quickly.
What would that require things like, more, like what would that require for us
So
to be
right
more
now-
responsive?
Yeah, so right now, everybody in the district is reading the book, All Learning is Social and Emotional, which really helps us think about not disciplinary measures, but what do we need to have in place to help teach students executive function and to understand really their viewpoint and have really, as you've been talking about the climate and culture, I think all of that fits really well together. It's work that we have started, and it's work that you have expressed passion about, and really thinking about at the foundation of what we do, how do we make sure that the way that we are being proactive with students and the way that we respond when things maybe don't go as we might hope or expect. And I think that those go hand in hand. So I think that we started that journey, but we're certainly not there yet. And then also, I appreciate the advocacy that you have shared and the work that you're putting around those big themes that we'll be able to continue to focus on.
And I appreciate the professional development and that everybody is learning together. And I just want to know, what we need to do to support the kids. Is it more staff? Is it higher paying job? How can we, is it behavior coaches in the schools? How can we better support that area? If the board were to provide support, because, we have salary and pay raises coming up, or where we can look at examining new positions and increasing pay, what would help provide relief?
And I think that will come through our strategic planning process. I would not be in a position to speak for all of the buildings and the directors of our district in order to answer that on the spot.
What are we doing to bring our buildings? It worries me that the expectations from one building to another seemingly change, and that's, I think, another problem where there's a lack of cohesiveness. No blame, but somewhere in here there's a lack of cohesiveness between the schools, where it's we have to check with this person, have to check how it's going with this person. I want you to know what's going on because it should be the same from this elementary school to this elementary school. The same expectation should be in all the schools. And so what are we doing to bridge that gap of all the schools together?
So one of the things that we started doing this year that is different, that I think has been very helpful, is that, so as an elementary team, which is typically where we see the variance because we just have one middle school and one high school, but also thinking about their experience through the system, is the format of the principal meetings. In the past, those occurred, we had a secondary meeting and then an all principal meeting and then the elementary meeting, and it was just kind of this monster day, and it was a lot of learning for them, but also information, and so there was not collaboration time built in. Those have been split up so that they're 3 separate meetings. And so the elementary principals are dedicated just at that time to meet. And there's an open agenda. So if there's something that somebody's working on, anybody can add to that agenda. And it has allowed for a lot more collaboration and joint decision-making versus kind of they were left to do that on their own in the past. And so that would be the one thing that I am aware of. But I would also, if you have additional questions, Mr. Bass is the supervisor of the elementary principals and Dr. Carlisle is of the secondary principals. So if it's related to my programming, I'm pretty in line with what they're doing, but I'm not kind of an all-encompassing knowledge base.
Okay.
So I'm gonna beg off on sharing too much. But I personally have really benefited from and appreciated because I too have been able to bring things to collaborate with them that in the past maybe would have been tried to be done by email and it just wasn't very helpful in the past.
I just have one more question, or I guess, can we do this sort of idea based on the great presentation we had from Iowa State Schools, So I'm really thrilled to hear you're incorporating the idea of the safe statement. You will need to have a further conversation. One of the things I wanted to talk about is for suspension data and tracking, even if it's only internally, if it's not required, if we can have that tracking for the rate of LGBTQ students. So right now, we don't have a marker, and there isn't an accurate reporting system. We all know that it's inaccurately reported, but I think based statistics, we have to start somewhere. Is there somewhere we can add, that non-binary, non-conforming? And so that way, once we have it at school registration, to the best of our ability, we can be tracking suspension data and things on LGBTQ, knowing that it's some flawed data and there are some variables.
I think the challenge would be that low number where it would be almost self-identifying.
If it would be self-identifiable, then we absolutely would not want to do
And
it.
our numbers are really low.
Well, and
I will.
the reason I envisioned it as
I understand why you want to do that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I will want to work on that.
I get Steve's points, and what really made me think of it was when he was presenting and he talked about the at-risk for missing schools and suspensions and things like that. It made me think, oh my gosh, is that a population that, warrants tracking? How would we do that? And so if you can brainstorm at all over that, I'd love to hear what you could come up with. But Steve's absolutely right to his point. We wouldn't want to be self-identifying with,
But I think what would be more interesting data actually would be if there was some sort of office referral that indicated that it was related to like a bullying incident with a student that was identifying themselves as LGBT.
That would be fascinating.
I think the issue lies with also how people are treating each other within the buildings. And that's where also the Iowa State School really comes into play, is to make sure that every student in the building and every staff feels safe. And I think that would be interesting data to look at, because your defiance or your insubordination or class disruption, that doesn't really drill down to what specifically was that infraction.
I think that's fascinating data.
Thank you.
I would also share a little publicly that, the board has been extremely supportive in things that you might not think about. I know in my years, we have increased counselors. We didn't used to have one per building. We have increased behavior techs in the buildings. We've increased deans. All of those things can make an impact on students who are struggling with that risk.
I think it's fair to say that you continue to have our support. And from my perspective anyway, if we're seeing an uptick in behavior in our 6th grade students, maybe we have to look at an elementary where we're seeing that mark and just preparing them from the behavior aspect for 6th grade and the changes that come with that. So I would say, at least speaking for myself, that you guys continue to have our support too, or my support, to move forward and be proactive in finding a response to the data that we're seeing.
And if sixth grade continues to be that trend, then looking at more specifically at what supports are we providing fifth graders as they are transitioning into that bigger school.
And it hasn't traditionally been that. I think every once in a while we just get more challenging classes than others as a group.
Well, I think you're right, Carrie,
But yes, if we do start to see that as, oh my gosh, it's happening again, then yes. And interesting, we are doing a revamp of what used to be Moving On Up. So for those of you that are familiar with that, the first few days of middle school for sixth graders, the pieces that would normally be around really that transition of how do I do my locker, how do I navigate the building, and how do I take care of my backpack, will be incorporated for all students within the school day so that nobody's left out of that. We're still going to do the ropes course activity for those that choose to sign up for it. And it is called Jayhawks on the Way. So if you might hear, you have students at fifth grade or friends who have students at fifth grade, that is going to change in terms of its format to be more responsive and make sure that everybody gets those skills versus just those students who signed up.
So it'll be somehow during the first few days? Or,
Yeah.
Good. That's really good.
I'm sorry, Sarah, did I cut you off?
It's okay. No, it's fine. I think, I don't remember what I was gonna say.
Okay,
So.
sorry.
Done? Thank you.
We I guess when we'll hear from Carrie again, an update with Dr. Schlitter.
When will you hear an update?
Or, I think
Are we kind of doing this, we're kind of expecting maybe by semester?
The discipline data is provided at each semester.
Yeah. So it
Is
would
that the
probably be,
question?
I guess I have one more question around that then, like, a response or the response, or when that response, like deciding after, working together as an administrative team, kind of what the response is gonna be. At what point do we, have a response, or do we kind of?
What do you mean by a response?
I guess what I'm thinking is, are moving forward with being proactive and looking at our referrals or looking at the demographics of our students, and maybe identifying that the districts might be changing a little bit, and that we need to be responsive to.
So I believe that our principals are suspending students when there are infractions that would be the appropriate response for in order to make safety in our buildings. I think all of them are being reflective and are implementing strategies about how to be proactive and make sure that the environment is set up in a way that we're not triggering or causing.
Sure, but if we don't see the suspension data going down, then our response is not.
Our suspension data is going down. So there was a graph that was linked in that does show
I thought it was going down.
suspensions now than we did have last year. So if I guess the place that I would expect a response is because you approve the handbooks each year, if there are behaviors in there that you don't think warrant a suspension, then I think that would be the place that we would need to think about what is the response or what is the reaction that we want to have happen when a student gets into an altercation with another student, or when a student is bringing vape products to school, or when a student is telling a teacher profanities
I mean,
I
there
guess that would be the place that I would look at. I think that the ongoing work is being reflective and they do look at their data to make sure that are they seeing trends of places that they would want to address in terms of, again, that type of triggering behavior that might escalate a situation versus de-escalate a situation.
And so if we were concerned about some of these items on the list, would it be appropriate to email you, or who would we email? I mean, for example, tobacco-related out-of-school suspensions. You're just giving them more free time to smoke instead of being educated about learning why you shouldn't smoke. I don't know, I just don't feel like we should take kids out of school for that. What's our venue for saying, hey, we don't like this one, or whatever it is?
So I would either put together those questions. I do know, so for instance, we talked about vaping pretty extensively this summer and whether or not that should be suspendable, not suspendable. Our secondary staff have communicated with others in the metro to see what others are doing. They are piloting an education piece with that, where students would be doing some online learning around the consequences and that sort of thing.
I think the smoking cessations program in lieu of suspension is terrific.
So I think that part of that is what we are capable of putting in place. So like the online learning would not be a smoking cessation program, so I don't want to.
Oh, well, I'm saying don't kick them out, have them do something else. Let's stay in school.
Yeah, and so the principals are the ones that revise their handbooks and have the best knowledge about why they might feel that something is important or not important.
I think that probably part of the question is, and there's no way that we can know what's going on in the building administratively and what people are doing, you know, and I think that's what people are asking. And I would suggest that if we have specific questions or concerns about that, they either go to Carrie or they go to Steve or they go to me, and we will try to continue to work on those. I think this is a work in progress, and I think reading the book and raising awareness is it's a very, very, very first step.
But I feel like we've been reading books for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I feel like last year when we were here, we were presented with all these books that we were reading. And so I feel like we're back again this year and we're reading books, and I appreciate that, don't misunderstand. And I don't take how I'm saying it as an unintentional like sarcasm or whatever, because it really isn't meant to be. I think ongoing learning is essential to obviously everything you guys are doing. I'm just saying at some point we need those action steps that go with those books. And yes, I don't really know specifically what response I'm looking for, but I'm just hoping that there's a response coming, and maybe we're gonna look at, you're gonna come to us with a presentation or an opportunity and say, you know, we've looked at our student population, we've looked at the suspension data within certain populations of our students, and we do need to be more responsive. We want to keep these kids in school, and therefore we need to, you know, dig in deeper with our social learning, or we need to bring in more support staff, or we need to do something, because suspension is the last step, because we are. So I guess I don't know specifically what I'm looking for. I'm just hoping, and I want to again say that you have my support to be responsive and give us, our students, more than less at this point.
I'm sorry, I have an idea of something I think we can do as a board. Steve, when do we see the handbooks that would cover, because the handbooks you said summertime? Okay.
Or when they come to you for approval.
Is that-
So if you wanted to review those at a meeting prior, like upcoming soon would be a good time.
I think that would be great. If we could review them, because I think this board has a lot more knowledge than the last time we looked at those handbooks in terms of looking at appropriate disciplinary kind of responses. And so I think I think I'd like to see that, and maybe as a board spend more time than we normally would when approving something like that. Because that's something we can do and we can control. So I guess I'd like to, if possible, have those brought up as an item for future review on the agenda, maybe a little bit earlier than we normally would, so we can start to spend some time on it and discuss it. Kevin, does that sound?
I might also suggest possibly having some sort of a retreat with administration. And I think if the board goes back and looks at that document, again, we never had a chance to talk about it, and you guys never did amongst each other. But that document that we gave you a month ago, because you asked questions about MTSS, about SEL, there's been extensive work in this district, which means looking at data. So again, just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. So when you say that book is just a start, that's a start for our general population as whole, but there's been lots of stuff. You go back and look at that. There's probably 40 pages of data and research and meetings and conversations.
So if you don't provide it to us, and we don't have it data, we assume that you all have been working very hard.
Well, you can see through the documents, many of those in there, if you look, are what we use as processes to, when you talk about consistency, that's how we ensure consistency. They're not just this building, this building. Some of that data is, of course.
So you are requesting that we have a retreat to review your document?
I think to have a conversation with administration, because again, a lot of that training happens at the building level when you're talking about PBIS. We don't do that training at the district level, but they all get it through Heartland and stuff. So again, there's so many more things that the principals could share that I couldn't, or Carrie couldn't, because they're doing it at the building level.
Okay, so if we can kind of wrap this up, what I'm hearing, maybe a workshop topic would be reviewing some of the plans and actions that are going on right now. Reviewing that documentation. That's what I'm hearing?
And I'd say like a roundtable conversation
Right.
where nothing's on the line, we're just as board members trying to learn more.
Right, yeah. And at this point, if we have continuing thoughts, because we do have quite a bit more to do tonight, continuing thoughts, feel free to express those.
I think
Say questions.
Right, I think it'd also be very helpful to see what initiatives are going in each building on
Yeah, that's
SBMH so that we can get an understanding of what is the consistency of evidence-based MTSS systems. Because that's what I'm seeing, is that there's not a consistency across our whole district. There's pieces here and there. And so I'd like to get an idea of what is that consistency.
Right, so
And the handbook.
handbook will probably be a different issue.
No, I know, but that,
Right, and that's also what I heard. So I've got this written down. We'll try to put them in Google Calendar. If you're comfortable, we kind of need to move on. Okay?
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to bring forward the consent agenda?
Second.
Do you have any questions on anything that is listed in there? Quite a bit of stuff.
I did want to point out, we did want to do this, is we did have a request from a teacher who had a leave request. I want to point that out. It's separate, but again, it's not a traditional personnel report, so I just wanted to highlight that.
yeah, I guess I would prefer a motion to remove item C from the consent agenda and discuss separately.
Second.
Yeah, okay.
C or C?
C.
CI.
Which is the only item we got.
Yeah, but it's the only one in there. So,
Personnel reports.
oh, there is. Yep, sorry, CI.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. So may we move on to the others and then maybe consider that one at the end?
Yes, I have a I have a question on consent agenda, is that okay? So I'm noticing we have all of these, little contracts in here, and my understanding was we don't see these little contracts because we've been told, you know, pretty clearly in that meeting about a month ago, we were told that you guys have spending authority of 25,000. So I'm just wondering why we're now seeing all of these little contracts in here, and if that's something that will continue being seen, or if there is a specific reason why today.
That will continue. Catherine and I spoke with ours and basically came to a process to ensure that under anything that needs a signature comes to the board table.
Okay, thank you.
Well, not necessarily need a signature, it's a formal contract.
Right, so,
And it will probably, this will continue, partly because of the current efforts of transparency across the state, particularly in some of our neighboring districts. And so,
is it efforts of transparency or is it code?
so, yeah, we'll continue to see those. Have any other questions on any items? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we'll go back and consider the request for an extending the leave of absence.
So when we voted to do one leave of absence a year ago, not a little less than a year ago, I voted for that with the intention of voting to extend it for 2 years. So I would vote for this.
Say that again.
When we approved the 1 year leave of absence in April, I did that under the assumption and the intention of granting the 2 years, but was told we couldn't grant just 2 years, we had to do 1 year at a time. So the process would be to do 1 year and then look at it again this year and decide whether to approve or deny for an additional year. So I don't know how the board feels, but I would vote no to denying. There's a lot of double negatives here. I would approve the extension.
I would agree that I had the same intentions that, you know, this teacher was taking on a 2-year endeavor, and certainly he didn't mean for it to come to an abrupt end. I think there is a difference, you know, in this, what this teacher is doing. They're seeking a higher education. I don't think we can be giving leaves of absences for certainly everything. I really admire this teacher's ambition. My only wonder is, question I have outstanding, because I would like to support their ambition, is what commitment does then that teacher have to Urbandale, or any commitment we can require that they must stay a year or 2 years?
I think that's the thing, we can't require.
We can't require they stay, and that was my question. Because ideally, I would have liked to make sure that our investment was going to be returned upon, and instead, you know, we are forced to act on good faith that our investment will be returned and that he wants to come back and teach our children the things he's learned.
And I would say, Steve, I appreciate your analysis here, and I understand the district's position of wanting to be consistent. But I think we're uniquely positioned because of the size of Urbandale for us to make strategic decisions that are inconsistent. And I guess that's wrong.
I just remind the board, we have over 300 certified staff. And again, while I understand where you're coming from, he's not just taking a year leave, or 2 years, excuse me, to learn. He's getting paid for that position. And the precedent, and this will be the last I'll say because we'll abide by the board, but the precedent you set for this, if anyone were to come, well, you'll have to almost approve everyone. And
He's getting not paid by the district.
No, he's getting paid by that. So he left to take a position.
The graduate.
And so anyone else could too. So again, that's a huge concern from legal counsel, not just coming from
But
state.
he's going to Colorado for the purpose of completing his master's degree.
He was asked to come out there. He's doing kind of an internship, plus he's doing his degree. That's correct.
But so he's getting paid, but he's I mean, he's got a nice setup for himself. He can get paid and get a master's degree. Kudos to him to have figured out a way to do that.
This legal analysis, is that, that wasn't given to,
Last year, yes, it was. It
No,
was provided last year. That's the first place we go to is legal counsel.
okay, well, I guess I don't
And
wanna,
that was the thing we said last year. We're concerned with the precedent you would establish. And again, I would just, and I'll be quiet, I would respectfully ask the board to think about doing what's best for the district. That's your role.
Do we have to have a decision today? When's the last day we have to have a decision?
yeah, we did do an emergency decision.
We
for
did
him
last time because
time.
we needed more additional information. We
But
had the
also we-
discussion where
no, we had a
we were
special-
going to basically continue that for 1 year and opt to renew it after a year.
Well, and I think we did that, if memory serves, and it's fine if you just need additional time to think, but we didn't have enough voting members to where one person would have been the tiebreaker, and since they knew Myron, it would have been not appropriate, so that's why we did the phone meeting. I'm comfortable voting tonight, but I respect anybody that needs additional time to ponder their vote.
I would just say, we don't think we're,
Say it again. What did you say?
I would say, in my judgment is that my decision is, so I hope that.
Yeah, I kind of resent any insinuation to the otherwise, that we would be doing what's in the best interest of our staff. And I don't think that it is necessarily establishing a precedent for any type of leave of absence. It's establishing a precedent for a leave of absence to obtain higher education. And that's how I see it. Because if this were not for higher education, I may not have voted the way I voted initially.
But I do think if we, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, I mean, where Steve's coming from in terms of if we had, I mean, we are opening the door, you know, I don't know.
I guess.
And Steve is just coming from legal counsel, to be clear. Steve personally doesn't care. So,
Can I ask a new director kind of
Yes,
question?
you should. I want you to have all the
Yeah, like
information.
how often is this approved? Like how, is this like a isolated circumstance? Is this something that we do regularly with extended leaves? How is it written that we take into consideration? Like I hear Stacy saying that, oh, for extended education or higher education, but if that's not something that has been spelled out, then we also need to be really conscientious, I think, of the decisions that we make based on what is outlined in our policy.
the challenge is policies are never written to be for specific situations. It is to truly give the board freedom to make their decisions. The challenge that really comes up, this is the first time it's ever happened in my 11 years as a SUE. The challenge where it comes up is teachers have a 1-year renewing contract. So when he asks for 2 years, that's an immediate, there is no such thing.
And there's no
really.
guarantee that this person will come back.
If this person were to come, no, there is not. If he were to come back, we'd also have to rip somebody.
Right.
And then, again, he's not guaranteed the position he left in.
Got you, because of seniority and things like that.
But either way, if he were to come back now,
He would have.
we would still, okay.
Yes, without a
But we would still have to take somebody out of his
That's
position, right? So either way, we'd still have to remove somebody. So that's either way going to happen.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Just for the folks that were here last time, when you approved it, well, I mean, was there a basic understanding that it would, from his point of view, that it would be approved for the second year? Like,
Yeah,
wasn't a for sure, obviously, that was a,
yes.
We
My
were
perspective
going to a
understanding. Can I-
2-year program.
Yeah.
But mine were new too. I mean, I had very candid conversations with him. He's a great guy. He understood that it was no guarantee he would, because he understood he had a 1-year contract. He said I had to ask. It was his word for word line to me, and I don't like it.
So this particular category covers both vocal and instrumental music. Isn't that the pool?
Believe so.
So that means that when and if he comes back, somehow a decision would have to be made on who we would reduce in force, basically let go, so that he could do that. And it might be that it's an elementary vocal music position for someone who at that point will have a master's degree and was invited to this conducting program. And so, you know, so, and there is, again, no guarantee necessarily that he will choose to do that. And my ambivalence about it is that we have some very fine music instructors, and the disruption in their lives when he knowingly took this risk. And I did not. I'll have to tell you, when we voted to go with the contract, it was a way to get out of having to make this decision. We talked about the master contract. I was happy that everyone was able to abide by the master contract when there was nothing necessarily legally binding on that. So that's how that decision was made, from my perception. And I'll be honest, I abstained. He's a friend of mine. So I think there are a number of factors here that probably need to be thought out a little bit. If we are cutting another teacher, for example, the person who is the current band instructor who came here with 20 plus experience years from a neighboring district, it's not apples to apples.
My struggle is the reduction in force.
Yes, that is mine too. Yes, that's exactly where I'm coming from. So I don't know whether this brings up any other thoughts on the matter.
How is that different than if we granted a 1-year leave? There would still have to be a reduction in force if he came back, right?
My expectation would be that the HR person here would make that very, very clear to whoever they hired.
My expectation is that
a
was
1 year.
going to be made in under this situation as well.
And I have no idea whether that took place.
Right, because, you know, I see where you're coming from with the reduction in staff, but that was kind of my question of, well, you know, they know it's gonna happen. He can come back right now. I mean, in a year and have his years up and get his job back. And that person knew, or somebody knew, and if they didn't tell them, that's not on our hands. If that wasn't communicated, because it should have been communicated to that person very clearly, and I would feel terribly if it wasn't.
Catherine, could I say something?
Please.
I can't speak to that, but I would in general agree with that. What I would also think about is, while each one individually could come to the board for decision-making on a yes or no for additional requests for leave, we also have to think about recruiting the best possible workforce we can. And if there is a precedent set that we will grant numerous leaves of absence, we may have a hesitation of staff to come to our district to work because of the chance of a RIF a year or two later. Now, I can't speak to how great that might be, but it could happen. The other thing I would say is that while it is obviously true that he went to get higher education, in the future, we could be told virtually anything regarding what somebody is going to go do without the ability to really know for sure, without asking for further documentation, all that, whether that happens or not. And things could change for people once they leave. That could change the reasons that they go. You may be put in a position where there will be lots of different reasons that you're asked to either approve or not approve. And if you're okay with having the different, like, just individual situations to make decisions on, then you can certainly do that. But I would just think long and hard about how many different situations you want to be making these decisions on and what the criteria is. There is no criteria that I know of in board policy that states because of higher education, we think that it's a better thing to do, but if it's this other reason it's not, there's no language in there about that at this time.
And I think that's why it's written openly, to give the board the freedom to make their own decisions.
When we were presented with this, it was a unique situation from my perspective because there isn't this kind of master's program at every school. There's not even this program in every state or every other region. And so it was unique, and when I voted for it, I would feel disingenuous not approving another year. Because that was my understanding that the only way to do this 2 years was to do 1 year and then another one, or else I would have made the motion to, and I think I tried to just do it at one time for the 2 years. So if we're not ready to take a vote right now, I would suggest moving it, but if we are ready,
And again, I'll ask my question, when do we have to have a decision?
I don't think he gave you a date, did he? What more information could the board have to make the decision?
I think you have 2 new board members walking into the situation that may not have had the full flavor of what happened previously. And so I'll look to the 2 new board members, maybe unfairly, but you need the initial information or the opportunity to ask further questions. I would say, let's table this and take the vote in the next meeting. If you don't, let's stay.
Well, actually, I was going to request, can we table it until the next meeting so that we have some time to at least, I mean, I've looked at some of the documents that were sent to me prior to this meeting, but haven't heard some of this as well. I would like to sit on it a little bit and think through.
I'm feeling the exact same way.
so move to table, item CI for the next board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, all opposed? Thank you. Thank you for the discussion. Apparently she's not happy.
She agreed.
Okay. Any other matters that need to come up?
We did that.
Okay. So we will not be adjourning. We are going to be moving now into a work session with Dr. Stockert.
Can we take it quick?
Please. If there's any students here, yeah, we can sign for you and give me your white sheet so I can forward it to you. Yes, yeah.